Begin the current Daf, Mesechtes Kidushin Daf Chaf. We begin 13 lines down at the top of the Yomid, but the Gemara continues to explain the halacha of our previous Mishnah. As we mentioned, we so far did two Mishnayos in this parak, in this Masechta, because we're talking about Kidushin, but Kidushin is the Kinyan. We spoke about Isha Niknis, that was the opening Mishnah, a woman being acquired. The second Mishnah was an Eved Ivri, how an Eved Ivri, his body is acquired. And the Gemara continues explaining the Kinyanim of an Eved, both when he is acquired and both when he's released, how he acquires himself. Shiur is sponsored by Kazakh and Cheskel, turn to Daf Yomi. I'm turning to today's Daf. Some of the things we're going to discuss in today's Daf are a well-known Rashi that's brought in the beginning, Parashat Mishpatim, Begat B'Yaveh, Begat B'Yetze, that the Eved Ivri, when he comes in alone, he goes out alone. Halacha of, which is a little bit complex in the Gemara, of just how the Gemara tries to explain it, about Nimka B'Shbiach, Nimka B'Hichsev. What happens if the Eved is sold and then he goes up in price? What happens if he goes down the price? What's that relevant during his slavery if he goes up or down the price? The relevance is going to be when he has to redeem himself. How much does he pay for his redemption? Is it based on his purchase price, or is it going to be based on how much his value is at that point? The halacha that's well known also that Eved Ivri and Gitvaim together with you, and that you're buying an Adin for yourself when you buy an Eved Ivri for yourself. The halacha of Adam Nisim and Nisim Per Shvi is that the Gemara goes through a whole evolution of punishments. That what happens if a person does merchandise with the Shemitah produce, which is forbidden as a mitzvah saseh, then he goes down and down and down and down, punishment after punishment, till he sells himself as an Eved Ivri. The Gemara gets also in a more of a complex discussion regarding drushes of Nigal Lechatzoin V'Leiv V'Goyel, about a few different contexts. Could it be halfway redeemed, and could you borrow and redeem, or does it have to be all the way, and do you have to have your own financial ability, and not that you could borrow? And that comes up in the context of Meichas Te'achuza, about selling an ancestral field, Makdash Te'achuza, sanctifying an ancestral field, and Meicher Bayis B'Bater Echaim is selling a house in a walled city, which the Gemara ends up going through the intricacies of each one of these halachas, because each one of them has the halacha of redeeming. And the Gemara tries to explain, if you say it applies over here, would you say it applies over here? And the Gemara says, well, this is different than this one. And the Gemara goes through all the different variables of these cases to tell you that maybe it only applies over here and not by this other case. So begin the current Daf Chav, begin by the two dots, where the Gemara brings Tanabon the Braisa that continues on these halachas of the Eved Ivri. It says in the pasuk, the beginning of Shemais, in Sefer Shemais, in the beginning of Parashat Mishpatim, it says by the Eved Ivri that's sold to you, it says Im Begapa Yavoy, Begapa Yetze. If he comes in by himself, he goes out by himself. What does that mean, Begapa? So it's read Begufay Nichnes, Begufay Yetze. If he comes in with his body, he goes out with his body, which the Gemara later on is going to explain what exactly does that mean. Blazim Yaakov says it means Yechidi Nichnes, Yechidi Yetze. If he came in by himself, he goes out by himself, which the Gemara is going to explain that also. So first the Gemara says, my Begufay Nichnes, Begufay Yetze. We're not talking about the way Eved Ivri is kaina as atzma, how he acquires himself back. What does it mean? He goes out with his body. So Amar Rabbi says it means loy misheinu yotze b'rosh yevarim ke'eved. It means to say an Eved Kanani, when he gets injured, you knock out his eye, you knock out his tooth, he goes free. We say that the Eved Ivri, no, he goes out with his body, meaning his body has to be intact. That's not sending him free because he gets his eye knocked out or his tooth knocked out. So that's what we're saying, that he does not have the same halacha as the Eved Kanani. So on that says the Gemara, Abai asked on Rabbi, that's really what Begapa Yava, Begapa Yetze, meaning that he goes out with his body, meaning not when it's missing. But Hahumilei say it says Savadim Nafka. We know from a different pasuk in the Torah. It says clearly that he doesn't go out the way the non-Jewish slaves go out. Why do I need Begapa Yava, Begapa Yetze to teach me that? Says the Gemara, no, if I only had that teaching, I would have said, when it says Leiseitzi, that you don't go out with the heads of the limbs like the other slaves, the non-Jewish slaves, because they go out, but they don't take anything for the injury that was incurred upon them. But over here, I would think, I would think, yes, he doesn't go out the same way that they go out with the eye knocked out, but he can't sue him for $5 million for liability for the injury. But I would say the Jew, yes, he doesn't go out the same way, but he would go out, but he would get paid for it. That you need an extra pasuk to say that no, the halacha of going out does not apply by the Chasar and the Bivarim at all by a Jew. So that's one pshat, what Begapa Yava, Begapa Yetze means. It means Begufay Nechnes, Begufay Yetze goes out with his body. He's not going out because he's being injured. As we quoted him before, he said, "Yichidi nechdes yichidi yatsa." What does begape mean? It means a line, just himself. He comes in by himself, he goes out by himself. Says, what does it mean he goes out by himself? So he says, this is what the pasuk is saying. You're right, as Rashi explains, according to Eliezer, the word begape also means begufay, with his body. But he explains it to mean not because his body has to be intact, but if he came only with his body, then he's going to go out also only with his body. What does that mean to say? It means to say the following halacha. Yeshli isha banim, if he's coming in as a slave and he has a wife and kids, then Rabbi Moisaloi, then his master could give him, against his will, shivcha kananis, a non-Jewish maidservant to sleep with, to have children as avodim. But ainli isha banim, if he came in bigapoy, if he came in alain v'ashtain, he came in just himself, he doesn't have a wife and kids, begapa yetze, he's going out alone, meaning in Rabbi Moisaloi shivcha kananis, his master cannot give him the non-Jewish maidservant. That's the lesson that's taught from the pasuk begapa yav begatze yetze. So again, either means he doesn't go out kashar avodim, or it means to say that his master cannot give him a shivcha kananis. Now, here's where the Gemara gets a little bit more complex. We're talking about how the Eved goes free. So one of the ways is Geroin Kesev, is Pidyon, is where he does Geula, where he redeems himself for whatever is left. So Tarma Brisa. What happens if you have the following case? Nimka b'mana, he was sold for 100 dinar. Vishbiach, now over time he went up in value. V'amad al Masayim, now he's actually worth, for the whole overarching of the sale, he's actually worth 200. How do you know that if you're coming to diminish, to redeem himself, you do not calculate elamana, only how much would come out from that mana for every year of the 6 years, a sixth of the mana, how much you diminish for every single year. So if, let's say, you have a year left on the contract of the 6 years of his slavery, you pay a sixth of a mana. And you don't say, well, what I mean, he went up in price. Either, like Rashi says, either work is more expensive, or this guy got stronger, and now he's worth 200. Either way, maybe you would say, no, let's count the 6 years of 200, and he should have to give a third of a mana, not just a sixth of a mana. How do you know that you don't? You only do a mana. Shemaka says in the pasuk, when he's coming to redeem himself, the pasuk says that if there's still many years yet left, according to them, he's going to return his redemption, mikesef miknasai, which is clearly from the purchase price, how he was when he was bought. That's Yashiv Gulasi, says the pasuk, how he returns to redeem himself. Now the problem is we're going to see the exact opposite. Nimke b'masayim. Okay, that makes sense. Mikes Magnasi from the purchase price, and it was only 100. Then now that it went up to 200, it doesn't make a difference. But look at the next case of the price. Nimke b'masayim. Let's say he was sold for 200, and then mehichsef, he got ruined. He put on 70 pounds. The guy, he's losing muscle mass. He's only worth v'aman almana. Now, if we would evaluate him now, his stock has plummeted. He's only worth 100. How do you know that you only calculate the years remaining that he has to work, elamana, as if he was sold for a mana? Which you wonder later is going to say, why did you see fit to darshan lakula both ways? You're saying you're giving the master the short end of the stick on both sides. But how do you know that you're only going to qualify how much he's worth now? Because Tamalamer, it says in the pasuk that if this is the pasuk right after the pasuk we just quoted before. So if there's some little years left till the Yovel year and you're calculating for him, it says Kafi Shanav, according to his years, that's how much you're going to return the redemption. Now, Kafi Shanav is the years remaining, how much you have left. That's how much he's going to pay out. But Kafi Shanav also means how much it's worth now, what's remaining. So therefore, again, we'll explain in a moment why we're doing this, Lakula, but we're saying either way, we're going to give him the easy way out. It says the Brisa first, I would only know a slave that's sold to non-Jews, and that's actually the context of these psukim that we just quoted, were the geula of when the yid is sold to a non-Jew. And the reason why I would say it specifically, this halacha, is when it's sold to a non-Jew, there's halacha where the relatives are mentioned in the Torah specifically only when a Jew is sold to a non-Jew. It doesn't say when he's sold to another Jew. When he's sold to a non-Jew, the Torah tells us his uncle, his cousin, they have to redeem him. So then Yodal al Tachtain, we'd say the seller, meaning the non-Jewish owner, has the lower hand, because we see that we encourage this redemption of the Jewish slave. Nimkal Yisrael Manala, and how do you know when he sold to a Jew? We say the same thing. Tamalem, this is we discussed this at great length in the previous daf. Sachar Sachal Xereshava, We said it says sacher, the word sacher by when he sold to a non-Jew. It says sacher when he sold to a Jew. Just like over there, we're going to give the benefit to the slave. So too when he sold to a Jew, we're going to give it to the slave. Now, it's going to relate back to this teaching. We still didn't explain the brisa yet, but Amar Abaya, as Rashi tells us, when Abaya was in a good mood, he used to say this following phrase. He says, Hareini, I'm open and prepared to respond to any of my stump the rabbi, to whoever's going to ask me a Dvar Torah, ki Ben Azai b'shuki Tveria, like the way Ben Azai was in the previous generation in the marketplace of Tveria, where Ben Azai lived in Tveria, and he was very sharp, and he was a big baldarshan. And as the Gemara says in Becher Staf Neches Manaf, he used to say, all the sages of the Jewish people are like a garlic peel in front of me, except for this bald one, referring to Rabbi Kiva. Whole discussion takes how could he call him the bald one? But the point is that I'm like Ben Azai. Who has a question? Try to stump me. So one of the rabbis said to Abaya, this halacha that we're middle discussing right now, this brisa, mechti, let's see. These psukim, you could expound them leniently, which is the way we're doing it. We're telling you both psukim the opposite, the lenient way, and you could also dash in the to say punkt fakert. Say if he goes up, that's when you're going to say it's going to be kafi shanav. When he goes down, you'll say, okay, it was mekasa meknasai, to be stringent, to say you got to pay the previous higher price. My chaz is dashin lakula. What did you see fit to darshan the psukim leniently? Nijashin l'chumra. You should expound it to be stringent on the slave, that if he goes up in price, he should have to go according to the remaining years left. If he goes down in price, then he has to pay according to how much of his purchase for. Says Abaya, no, you cannot think to entertain, to say it stringently. Why not? Because we find the Torah is lenient regarding the Eved. Where do you find that the Torah is easy going on the slave? It's time like learn a brisa. Well-known halacha. It says a pasuk in the Barim that kitoiv loy imach. Pasuk says that if the slave is going to say, "I'm not leaving because I love you, I love your house." Now, what's so good about slavery? Because kitoiv loy imach, it's actually good for him. Like the guy who's in jail, he has it better. He has a warm apartment, and he has TV, and he has computers, and he has exercise time. How to sleep? What, the streets of New York City is any better? He likes it. So what does the Eved Ivri like by you? Because it's good for him. Why is it good for him? In the words of the pasuk are ki toiv le'imach, because it's good for him with you. What do you mean with you? Imach b'machel ve'imach b'mishta. He's with you when you eat. He's with you when you drink. Meaning, you're not allowed to eat refined bread, and he's eating this coarse bread. It can't be you drinking this old aged expensive wine, that bottle that you pull out from the back when all those guests they leave, you pull it out. And he's drinking the new wine. No. It can't be you're sleeping on these beautiful pillows and he's sleeping on the straw. From here they said, whoever acquires a Jewish slave is like he's like acquiring a lord for himself. Which Taisa says, well, why an adon? Why? So he says because he brings from the Yerushalmi, which is at times a person has one pillow. If he's going to sleep on it himself, he's not mekam ketay b'limach because he's not with you on the pillow. And if you don't sleep on it and you don't give it to him, that's me this dime. So you're not sleeping on it anyway, so why not giving it to him? Comes out, you're going to have to give it to him. So he's the adon la'atzmai. So therefore you see that esh left off the pillow and you're sleeping on the shtroi. So you see that if a person acquires an Eved Ivri, he's like acquiring a master for himself. So therefore Abaya said, clearly if the Torah is so good to the Eved, obviously we're going to dash in the psukim l'kula. Says the Gemara, wait, maybe say that when did we say these things that were easy on him is regarding eating and drinking. And the reason is it shouldn't pain him. But a linyan pidyon, maybe regarding redemption, actually we should be stringent and say, no, you want to get yourself out of slavery, you put yourself in here, and therefore we're going to be stringent on you. You're going to have to pay the higher price either way. Why? Didn't we say we should be lenient? No, because there's a different opposite logic that applies to the Eved Ivri. The fact that he is a slave. Which he only came to slavery only because he was suspicious. He had suspicion. They suspected him on Shemitah produce. So the fact that you want to get out of the slavery, for that we should be stringent on you. The Tanakh learn a brisa. Here also the Gemara goes through an interesting Agadic evolution. That Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says, come and see how harsh is the dust of the Shemitah, meaning a lesser prohibition of Shemitah, that if you do business with its produce, that's only a lava b'machlal say. It's a negative prohibition. You're not allowed to do something inferred from a positive commandment, because the Torah says that the Shemitah year, the produce is la'achla, which the Gemara Darshans means v'loy l'schaycha. The Gemara Avodah Zarah says yes, it's to eat but not to do business. So it's from the lesser. You're not plowing, you're not doing any agricultural work. It's an inferred negative prohibition, and that would be the dust of the Shemitah year. Still, if if a person does business with the Shemitah produce, l'saif, what's going to end up happening is moiches metaltlav. He's going to end up selling first his movable items, first his car, first his boat. Just like it says the pasuk in Yikra, it says b'shnas hayovel, and the Gemara says hazais. On this yovel year, teshuva ish ala chazasai. Every man should go back to his ancestral items. And it says near that it says v'chi simkuru. It says v'chisim kurmem kol hamisecha. But if you read the pasuk, the way the Gemara is darshaning it, is that v'chisim kur is going back on the halacha of yovel, which is the similar halacha of shmita. Meaning, if you're going to sell and buy, what I said is forbidden to you from the shmita and yovel. At the end, you're going to sell memker. You're going to sell your sold items and all the items in your house lamisecha to your friend. Oy kanoi miyad hamisecha, or you're going to buy from the hand of your friend. So what are we talking about? What items? It's, if you were using the word miyad, it's davar nikne miyad liyad. It's something that's purchased from hand to hand. What, that's movable items, not real estate. Real estate doesn't go from hand to hand. So therefore, you see from the smicha sabsukim, v'chisimkuru, you're going to sell what we mentioned in the previous pasuk of shmita and yovel. Then it's going to be memker lamisecha ikon miyad. What, it's the things that nikne miyad liyad, which metal, and you're going to be selling this. You're going to have to sell your movable items. Now, loy hirgish. If, let's say, he didn't sense this, he didn't pay attention to the punishment that's coming on him to retract from the sins that he's doing, he doubles down. So then, l'saif merches hadaisav, at the end, he's going to sell his fields. So it's not enough that he sold his movable items, that he's selling his basketballs and all his items. He's going to sell his fields. Like it says in the pasuk later on, it says ki yamachachicha, and this is the order of the psukim. Your brother is going to be poor, or he's going to sell from his ancestral field. Now, it's not going to come to his hand that he's going to wake up at Shemeches Beisa. He's going to have to sell his house too. Shemar says later on, it says, if he's going to sell his house that he settled in a walled city, so this has a certain halacha. Now, the Gemara reflects on this teaching that we're mentioning here from this Brisa. What's the difference over there when we said, when he had to sell his movable items, and we said the amaloi hirgish. We said that, and if he doesn't chap, if he doesn't pay attention, he's not going to notice. He's going to end up selling his fields too. Now it sounds like that if he's not going to wake up and realize, then he's going to come to selling the fields. But why over here, after that stage, the whole brisa continues with the word we just jumped in right now. The first time it's mentioned, it's loy bas liyadai. That is not going to come to him until he's going to sell it, which sounds like it's so obvious to the Tana that that's going to happen, that he's not going to come to do tshuva, appropriate for El, until he's going to get all these punishments. Because it's like he's going to have to hit rock bottom. It's like it says that lebas liyad is not going to come to his hands until he's going to do this, and then he's going to do that. Why lebas liyad? Why did you first say lahirgish? He's not going to pay attention. He's not going to. And then the other one is lebas liyad. It says the Gemara, like the famous teaching in Rav Huna, another a real L type of a teaching. Rav Huna, he says, even once a person violates a sin, which in this case, the guy violated the halacha of selling shemitah produce, and v'shana ba. So the first time he did it, when he sold the shemitah produce, and he ends up selling his movable items, okay, he might chap, he might feel, hey, what's going on over here? But we said, if lo hergish, after he already sold his movable items, oh, then he already did it 2 times already. He once did it and got the punishment of selling his movable items, then he still did it. Then once he repeats it a second time, hutrulai, that sin becomes permitted to him. So the famous Gemara asks, hutrulai sagadaitach, what you really think to say that it becomes permitted for him once you do it on the very 2 times, Hashem suddenly lets you do it? And lanas is like that, no, becomes like permitted to him. And therefore, we're telling you that now already the Brisa continues, lebas liyad, lebas liyad, lebas liyad. It means to say, you're not going to wake up until you're going to hit the rock bottom, because once you did it already more than once, shines a dava mutter, you don't get shaken anymore. It's like, okay, yeah, you don't even realize. And therefore the whole brisa now continues, now it's not going to come to his hand to repent at shemeiches bita. So it's not enough that he sold his metaltlin, not enough that he sold his fields, now he's going to sell his daughter. Somebody says the pasuk over there later on Shemot, it says v'chiyimka ishes bita lama. That actually doesn't say over there. This is somewhere else. That if a man's going to sell his daughter as a maidservant, so the Gemara explains, although the daughter being sold is not written over there in the context of all those psukim that were darshaning one after another to darshan the smichas hapersha. However, the Gemara explains hakamash malan that what it's coming to teach us is that since the parsha of ribbis, borrowing on interest, is said near the parsha of selling your house, so like the words of Rashi are, Anan Sahadi, we are testifying that for sure he has sold his daughter already, if he has a minor daughter, before he's going to borrow with interest. Why? Because Nizvin Inish Barate, a person should sell his daughter and not buy on interest. My time, what's the reason? Because Barata Migrabanafka, by the daughter, at least the debt keeps on diminishing and she ultimately comes out. But if you borrow on interest, Moitzrav Azlav, anything, it just keeps on increasing the debt. That credit card bill just keeps on growing, and you're paying on that, just the minimum. You're digging yourself a grave. So interesting. The Gemara is saying, if we're going to tell you the whole ishtalshlis, we know for sure, because the next thing is going to be ribbis. We know for sure that you sold your daughter. So you sold your metaltlin, you sold your fields, and now you're going to sell your daughter. And lebas liade, it's not going to come to him to return achalav b'ribas until he's going to borrow with interest. Because it says over there in that order of the parishes that we're mentioning, that we're darshaning, each one worse than the one before it. It says after that, if your brother's going to be poor, and his hand's going to come to you, and it says near there, don't take from neshech umarbis, don't take from interest. So you see that he's coming to that situation where he's coming to borrow on interest. Now, he's not going to come to his hand to do tshuva at shemeichas atzma until he's going to sell himself. Shemech says in the pasuk, if your brother's going to be poor, he's going to be sold to you. And not only that, not only is he going to be sold to you, the Jew, but he's going to be sold to the convert. Shemech says in another parasha, which is near the parasha that he sold to you, it says, it says that if the ger or the teishav also becomes powerful, it says that he's going to be sold leger. Now, the truth is, and it's not to the righteous convert who becomes like a full Jew. Eliger Taishav. Actually, he's sold to the resident convert, which he's actually not a regular Jew. He's just done the Sheva Mitzvah B'nei Noach, and he's a certain unique halach of that. But Shem Ger Taishav, it says in the pasuk Ger Taishav. And not only that, it says Mishpachas Ger. It says in that pasuk, and this is all Mayikra Chavhei Mem Zayin, that he sold to the family of the Ger. Now, who's the family of the Ger? Those are the non-Jews. He sold to the idol worshippers. And not only that, when that pasuk says to acre, which is an idol, because Taisus says that, meaning at the end it has to be uprooted the avodah zarah. So acre is referring to the avodah zarah as a continuum of base. He's going to be sold to the idol itself, as Rashi explains, to chop wood for it and other needs, meaning not for idolatry purposes, but azayvat. It's going to come that this guy who did business with Shemitah produce, he's going to go one after another, because he's not going to wake up and do tshuva until he hits all the way onto the bottom. But one thing is, this was a whole discussion we brought in, only to say that how could you, Abaya, tell me? That's the reason why you're darshaning the psukim as a leniency on the Eved Ivri, to say that either way he's going to go out the more lesser one. If he goes up in price, we're going to say how he was cheaper when he was bought. If he's going to go down the price, we're going to say how much he has left. Why? Because the Torah is easy. It's good for him with you. Yeah, but we have a whole different drasha saying, the Torah is saying that he did the Aveira. Torah is giving him more and more punishments. He caused the slavery by doing business with Shemitah produce. It's not mustaba that we're going to be lenient on him. And therefore, the Gemara is saying that maybe we should darshan l'chumra. Why darshan l'kula? So Amalei Abai responds back to that question. He says, no, it's not true, because hasam ha'hadre kra. Because although, yes, you see the Torah is being strict with him and punishing him one after another, one klap after another, one patch after another one, yeah, and that's why people say, why does Hashem do this to me? Take a look. You didn't see how you did business with Shemitah produce, you would chab, why Hashem is doing this. But anyway, says Abai, the Torah ends up coming back and saying that all the Jewish people should actually have mercy on him. So it does make sense we should be lenient on him. Because the Tani debated Bishmal, he says, Since this guy, this Jewish guy who sold Shemitah produce, that he went so to speak, he became a priest for the Avodah Zarah. He's the wood chopper. He's the, and you're going to India, you see this Alta Yid from who knows where, he's doing bringing the incense for the idol. He went and became this priest for the Avodah Zarah. So maybe you would say Litchi Even Acha Neifel. It's like a phrase like push the stone after the one that fell. In other words, that he should just not be redeemed ever again. Let him die there in Tibet and just be buried over there. That's the pasuk says later on. No, it says Achari Nimkar. After that he sold Geula Tiyalai. There should be redemption for him. Echad me'echad yigalena. One of his brothers should redeem him. So you do see that the Torah is concerned for him. So after all his punishments, you see, says Abayam, and the Torah is saying, redeem him. So you see that the Torah is having rachmanis on him. So therefore says Abayam. That's why I'm interpreting the psukim leniently of this two psukim of Yashiv and of Kesem Miknasa. But no, the Gemara still asks, Ve'ema says, no, maybe say, Geula Tiyala, yes. Don't bring me a raya, the Torah is having rachmanis in him. This that says he should have a redemption is very simply that it shouldn't become assimilated amongst the idol worshippers. That's why the Torah says, redeem him. But regarding redemption, if he's just a slave, no, should be stringent on him from this teaching that we said before, because we see that the Torah punishes him one after another, and he caused the slavery. It doesn't make sense that we should go ahead and interpret it leniently. So therefore, Amar Nachman Yitzchak, he said a different shot. He comes to answer the question, again, could be rejected really Abaya's interpretation. He comes to say why we're saying we're going to interpret it leniently. Because today, there's two psukim where it says later on, it says, Im oid rabbeis bashanim. It says, if there's still many years left, according to those amount of years, that's how much he'll return for his redemption from his purchase price. Now, it says the pasuk after that, and these are the two psukim that say Mekesem, Meknase, and Kefi Shanav. The next pasuk says, V'ma'at nisha b'shanim, if there's a little bit left remaining in the years, so then the pasuk says, okay, whatever, how many years till Yovel, you calculate according to the years that he has, Kefi Shanav, and then Yashav es Gulasa, return his redemption. Now, the Gemara's question is that the word Rabbeis Bashanim sounds like that there's an increase in the years. So the Gemara asks very tamavata, says, Chiyesh shanim merubos v'yesh shanim mu'atos. What, there's more in years and there's less in years? How could there be more than the 6 or less than the 6? It's the years are always what the years are, and it's talking about that according to the years left that you're going to redeem him early. What does the pasuk mean to say Rabbis Bashanim and if there's Ma'at Nish Bashanim? So the Gemara says, Ella, rather, this is what it's saying, and it's going to explain the second why it's asking this question really. Nisrabba Kasbay, obviously what the pasuk is saying is that if his value goes up, meaning that there was an increase in these years. For example, if he gets stronger, that's what the pasuk is saying. Im oid rabbis bashanim, according to the amount he's going to give mikesef miknasai. Then we're going to do from his purchase price. We're going to calculate according to how much when he was bought as a leniency. The next pasuk that says ma'at nisha bashanim. What's ma'at? How do you have less in a year? Oh, it means because nisma'id kasbay, if during these years his value went down, that pasuk used the words kefi shanav. Oh, according to the amount of value he still has left to work. So you see that the psukim are saying this idea of if he goes up, then we go mikasa miknas. If he goes down, we go kefi shanav, how many years are left. Says Gemara, how do you know to say that? I can tell you the pasuk means something else. And the Gemara is gonna propose a very simple way of translating the pasuk. If the guy worked only 2 years, ufashle dalid, and he has 4 years left, so there's rabbeis bashanim. There's still many years left. So then nesiv le dalid mikes miknase. Then he should pay back for the years from his purchase price, just the value of 4 years. Of a dalid, in the next pasuk is saying if he worked 4 years already, pashle tart, and he's left with 2 years, meaning that's ima'at nish bashanim. A minimum of the years are left. So then they say, then you'll give back 2 years worth according to his value. And therefore, like Rashi says, the pasuk is not talking about him going up in value, going down in value. It's telling you a very, very simple thing. If there's many years left, so then you'll give according to that. And if there's less, then less than that. So says the Gemara, no, if that's the case, Nichta Kra, the Patik should have written without a base. Should have written Im Oid Rabbi Shanim, if there's still many years, Im At Nishashanim, if there's few years left. My Bashanim, what's in the years? That sounds like Nisraba Kasbai Bashan. There's a riba in the years because his value went up in the years. Then it's going to be Mekasa Meknasai. Then it's going to be from his original purchase price, the cheaper one. And when this might Kasbai Bishan in the base, if his value goes down in the years, Kifishanav, that's going to be according to the years that has left. So you see clearly the Pesukim themselves are telling you to go leniently if it goes up or down the value. And Amar Rabbi Yosef says, Darshin Rav Nachman Yitzchak ani Krar Kesinai. He expounded these psukim like mamish, like it was given in Har Sinai. That's how glad, that's how clear he darshan these psukim with the bays, and that's the source for this halacha that why we're lenient either way for the Ebed Ivri who sold when he wants to redeem himself. Now the Gemara starts the conversation that's going to go into the next daf, and it gives a siman of Eved and Bayis. So we're going to talk about a slave and a house of Chatzayim regarding can you redeem halfway. And then, which is actually, that mnemonic is actually for the next daf, of bias and eved as applies to Kraven, being redeemed through relatives. So what's this? So the Gemara explains as follows. Eved ivri hanim kalev, which we were just discussing, these psukim of when he sold to a non-Jew. Niga lechatzayin, could he be redeemed halfway? Let's say he could only afford half of his redemption. Could he give and minimize half of the years that he has left? Maybe he cannot be redeemed halfway at all, unless you have kedei gulasai, you have the full amount to redeem yourself. What's the question? The Gemara explains. Do you say gulasai gulasai? You have a gzeira shava, misteh achuz agama that you learn out from the ancestral field. What do you find by the ancestral field? So there's halacha that masteh achuza just like the ancestral field. The halacha is einay nigal lachatzayin. You cannot redeem halfway. Why not? Because the pasuk says, and it gets a little bit complicated to remember all the different cases that we're discussing, but the ancestral field, it says that umotza kedei gulasei. If you find enough to redeem, so obviously kedei gulasei is telling you, what do you mean enough to redeem? It means to say you have to redeem with the full purchase price and not halfway. Now here it doesn't say the word kedei. It just says yashav gulasei. He returns his redemption. So that's the question. Are we going to say, and Taisa explains, because it's not a full-fledged Gezerah Shav. If it was, we would say all the way. It's not a full-fledged Gezerah Shav. So we're asking, would we say we compare the Allah of the Ebed Ivri sold to the non-Jew where it says Gulasai, and it says Gulasai by the Stechuz, it's just like over there you cannot redeem halfway. Af Hai Nami, also over here. In the Nigalachatzain, they cannot be redeemed halfway. Maybe no, maybe we wouldn't say that. Maybe we would say Lukula Amrinan. Maybe we would say it as a leniency, because as Rashi explains, as we're going to see shortly in the Gemara, redeeming halfway has a leniency and it has a stringency. Now, where it's a leniency for him, maybe we would say that he could be redeemed. But where it's a stringency, maybe maybe we're going to say that he's not redeemed. Because why would we say it only for leniency, not as stringency? So Rashi explains. Because we just saw before, as the Gemara told us, when he goes up in value or he goes down in value, we say, for his redemption, we're going to go leniently. So the question now becomes, regarding redeeming the slave halfway, would we maybe say it that, yes, you cannot be redeemed halfway because we're learning gulasai, or maybe we're going to say that this, that he cannot be redeemed halfway, is only for a leniency, but not as a stringency. So we're going to see in a moment what that is, the stringent leniency, but Amalei said to him, wait a second. Lav Amad Hasam, didn't you say over there on Daf Yud Chesam and Aleph that we said if let's say a guy steals $500 worth of merchandise and he's worth 1,000 if he's sold for 6 years? We said according to everyone he cannot be sold. Why not? Obviously because Nimka Kula B'lechetzi. We said that no, he could only be totally sold and not halfway sold. If he's worth 1,000 and the theft is only worth 500, he would have to be sold halfway. He can't be sold halfway. Sachinami here also when it says in the pasuk, Oy hisigi yodoy, or he's going to be able to afford it, and nigal, and he's going to redeem the slave, is kuloi b'lechetze, is only all of it and not half of it. So therefore, the Gemara answered the question and said that it's going to be totally that he cannot be redeemed halfway; he has to be redeemed all the way. But Abaye does tell us. He says, "Im tim talem," if you're going to say, which this was the conversation that we had just mentioned, then nigal lachatzayin, that he could be redeemed halfway. So we just said no, he cannot be redeemed halfway. But like we entertained in the Gemara's Havamina, if you would say that he could be redeemed halfway, mishkachas la lekula, you could find this being a leniency, meaning that the redemption is going to be leniency for him for the good, but at the same time you could find uluchum as a trinity that's going to be bad for him. So the Gemara explains this case. What's this halacha? So the Gemara explains first the case of the kula. What's the case that'll be a leniency? Is as follows. It's a little bit of a cheshbon. Zavnei b'meya. So let's say he bought the slave for 100 dinar. Then Yoivle, the Eved, gave subsequently to the master chamshin 50 palgadadame, half of his value of redemption. Okay. The ashbach, and then he went up in price. He got stronger, or work went up, and you can't find good workers. Become al matzin, and now his value is at 200. Okay, so what's the question? So the Gemara explains. If you're going to say that nigal lechatzayin, that someone can be redeemed halfway, meaning that it's considered that he did a halfway geula. When he goes up in price, he did not go up totally in the master's domain in price, only halfway. Because remember, he already redeemed half of himself. If he's going to come now to finish up his redemption, yoiv lemeya v'nafik, he would give 100 and go out. Why 100? Because remember, he was worth 100, and he was down to 50, and then he went back up to 100. So if you're going to say that he's redeemed halfway, so now the master's value of 50 went up to 100. But v'yamar, if you say a nigal lechatzoyin, that it cannot be redeemed halfway. So if let's say so what's happening essentially when he gave the money for redemption, it wasn't anything, it didn't affect anything. That means to say he totally went up in the master's domain. So then Yovle Meya B'chamshem Anafik, he's gonna have to give 150 and go out, because that value that increased, obviously meaning he's not gonna have to give 200 because he already gave 50. But that didn't affect any redemption. It's like just on hold, but he would have to give the 150 because all of it went up in the master's domain. So the Gemara says, wait a second, this whole case doesn't even make sense. How could you tell me that the ramification is when he goes up in price, and that's going to make a difference if when he paid out half of his value is a geula or just on layaway? But Ahmed, you just told me in the previous circuit, you told me when he goes up in value, we only calculate according to how much he was when he was bought. You tell me the whole case is relevant when, as a leniency, if we consider the gula halfway when it goes up later, but we don't go with the increase in value. We go original purchase price. So the Gemara has to get a little bit more complex. The Gemara says, okay, we're talking about going to Eiker, Pizal, V'Eiker. He was high, went low, and then went high again. So what's the case? So Rashi explains. He bought him for 200 dinar. He went down in price. He was only worth 100. Now, if you recall, when he goes down in price, we calculate kefi shana, according to the remaining years left. So how much is that? It's 100. If the guy then goes and pays half of his value, how much is he going to be giving then? He's going to be giving 50. He's only calculating according to how much time is left. Now, he didn't get a chance to finish up redeeming himself until he went up in price and went back to being worth 200. Now, that value of 200 is going to be both kefi shanav, and it's going to be mekesev miknasai. So that's where we're saying that it's going to be a leniency, because that has relevancy now it still has relevancy for the 200, because that is mekesev miknasai and kefi shanav, because he was bought with 2 years for 200. So that's the case of where we're saying that there's going to be relevancy that, but since he gave half, whatever went up now to be back to like it was Mekas Megnasai, that is not gonna go all to the master. That's gonna go for him also, and he's not gonna have to pay as much as if the gula was nothing, because then he's going to have to go back up to his original purchase price, which was 200. So that's a leniency if you consider gula lechatzayin. However, the Gemara says mishkachas l'chum, it could come out as a stringency if you consider his redemption halfway. Where's the stringency? How's it going to be bad for him? So zavne b'masan, let's say he bought him for 200, and you have meya, and the slave, someone gave him some money, he was collecting. He gave Palgadam, he gave half of his value 100 to the other. Then Be'ixsaf, he went down in price afterwards, become Almeya. Now he's worth only 100. So what's the stringency? If you say that you could do a halfway redemption, so what's going to happen is the slave is going to have to pay out to the master 50 and then go out, because it was worth 200. He gave 100, so that means he paid up half. Now when he goes down to 100, so that's half and half. So that half is him and half is the master. He'd have to give him 50 and leave. But if you say that he cannot redeem himself halfway, so that means to say that the master had never acquired that money that he gave him in the halacha of redemption. Now that he goes down in value, so that means to say the entire 100 is waiting for him to redeem himself. So it comes at Hanach Mei, this 100 pekatin in Ugabe was a deposit by him, and Yav Luhu Nahalev Nafik. So then he would be able to just walk out. So it wouldn't be any of the loss, wouldn't be his. If you say that is Nigal Lechatzayin, so you have part of that loss too. So you still have 50 that you have to pay out. But if you don't say Nigal Lechatzayin, okay, that means the money I gave you was nothing. Now that it went down to 100, there's only 100 here, take the money and I could just walk out. So we find it to be a leniency and a stringency, this Nigal Lechatzayin. Depends if it goes up or goes down, or we said Oiker, B'nichsa v'Oiker. And that's what the Gemara was entertaining to say, that maybe the halacha would only be L'kula, not L'chumra, because we find that we're lenient with the Eved. And that the Gemara said, no, we say it totally across the board, that he's not Nigal Lechatzayin, as we compared it to the halacha. We find elsewhere that it's totally and it's not halfway. So to over here, it's totally and not halfway. And that was regarding the first mnemonic that we said a simon was Eved and bias of Chatzayin of halfway. Now we go on to the second case that we're discussing regarding of the equivalent regarding Hamoicha bias. If someone sells a house in a walled city, so the halacha is that you can only redeem it up until a year and not more than that. So the question is, Nigal Lechatzayin, if you give half the value within the year, have you redeemed half of it? Maybe it's not halfway redeemed. So what's the question? The Gemara explains. The pasuk says, Yamim tia gu'ulasai, that for a period of a year, which what Yamim means, should be gu'ulasai, his redemption. Now, it says the same word gu'ulasai by the ste'achuza. So maybe you'll say, so miste'achuza gama, you'll learn that from the ancestral field. And you'll say, mas te'achuza, just like the ancestral field. And in the Gels Lechatzayin, as we mentioned before, the pasuk clearly says there the word kidei. The word kidei, when you sell your ancestral field, you only if a kidei gulas, if you could afford the full amount, then you go out, and then you get the field back, but not halfway. So afhainami. So to when it's used the same word gulas by the walled city, the house that you sold, nami in the Gels Lechatzayin could also not be redeemed halfway. That's one.
You redeem the house and wants to pay the value that you paid. What it's worth today.
That the pasuk.
6 months later, the price goes up.
No, it's whatever. It's whatever is. Yeah, you want to say the guy when the guy sells. Who I'm saying by Batei Arachayma, you only have a year. Batei Arachayma, you only have a year to redeem. So you want to know what went down for a sale, what the value of the stock value, or.
Is that the value? That's exactly what we're talking about, right?
No, now we're talking about if you let's say you sold it for $1.5 million. So the question is, could you give $750,000 and redeem it? Nothing to do with the price going up, but nothing to do with the price going up or going down. No, it's just that we want to know the question. Yeah, there could be ramifications. The same ramifications could be if it goes up or goes down. But the question here we're just asking is, can you redeem it halfway or not? Or do you say that no, other the ganzach, other nicht? So yeah, you're asking a question. What would be if it would go up or go down? But now the Gemara is saying, so would you say that you cannot do it halfway, as we learned that from Ste'achuzah? No, Hecha the Gully. where the Torah reveals the word kedei gulasai, which that tells us you have to have the total redemption, like it says by steachuza, gali, that's where it reveals it. Hechad loy gali, where it does not reveal, doesn't say the word kedei, then like gali, then it's not revealing, and we're not going to learn that from there, because like Taisa says, it's not a full-fledged bona fide gezeres shava. So what would you say the halach is by the batei arachayma? So Malay said to him, in Midrasha should Rabbi Shimon nishma, from the teaching of Rabbi Shimon, you could learn out the answer to your question. What does Rabbi Shimon teach? He teaches the following teaching. He says, here also gets a little bit complex into the intricacies of these halachas of all these cases. He says, if a person doesn't have money, shalava v'goyel, so he borrows from someone and he redeems his ancestral field that he sold, which we need to have as siga yadai, we need to have that he could afford and get it back, and v'goyel lechatzayin, and you could redeem halfway. Where do we find this? The time like we learned in the Brisa. Pasuk says in Vayikra, Pasuk is talking about when someone is makdish his te'achuza, when he sanctifies his ancestral field. Pasuk says, in goel yigol, if he's going to redeem it, his field that he sanctified, so the Pasuk says he has to add on a fifth of the value. That's when you redeemed your ancestral field that you had been makdish. Now, Malamed, what's the extra word yigol come to teach you? Oh, Malamed, Shalov of a goyel, that extra redemption comes to see there's other ways of redeeming. You could borrow and redeem. The goyel lechatzayin, and you could redeem halfway. And then Rabbi Shimon says, Matam, what's the reason? Like Rashi explains, Rabbi Shimon throughout Shas, he expounds the reasoning, the rationale of the pasuk in all places, like the Gemara Bamitzir Kavtez Vav Manav tells us. So here also is giving a reason for the pasuk, and he's coming to let us know that the Torah is particular, that we want to make sure that the ste'achuza does not get removed from the inheritors. We want it to stay over there. And therefore we're increasing different ways how he could redeem this ste'achuza that is makdish. Why? The fishermetzinu, because we find b'meiches ste'achuza, we find by someone who sells an ancestral field, sheyupa that he has a lot of might, that his inheritance should not be removed. Because we find that if, let's say, the Yovel year reaches and he didn't redeem it, it goes back to the owner, meaning this is when you sell the ancestral field. When you sell the ancestral field, then it goes back to the owner by Yovel. And therefore, the Torah was not particular to make his strength stronger to allow him to redeem it by borrowing or to redeem halfway, because, okay, no, and you don't redeem it, don't worry, it'll stay by Yerushalayim anyway, because when you sell ancestral field, it's going back to them. Oh, so therefore we made it a little bit weaker. Therefore, you cannot borrow and redeem. You cannot redeem halfway. Now, in contrast, and this is actually the pasuk was going on the Rashi that says moicher, they take out that word, but makdish, when you sanctify an ancestral field, that's what we're saying that from that medrash of Rabbi Shimon, we learned that you could borrow and redeem halfway, because when someone is makdish a field, shahira kaichai, the halacha is that he has a very weaker strength, that he's going to lose his inheritance, because Shemegi Yovel Nigala, the halacha is, the Torah tells us, if Yovel year came and he didn't redeem it, the halacha actually is Yitzlu Kahan B'Yovel. Actually goes out to the Kahan B'Yovel, like it says in Mikra Chav Zayin. Oh yeah, so the B'Tzeiz of Yovel Kodesh, it's holy, and it gets divided amongst the Kahanim. Oh, so we're concerned now when you're Makdish Te'achuzah that you're going to lose this from your family forever. So Yipa Koichai. So the Torah comes along and gives him strength in the beginning of the redemption. Shalov of a girl that he can borrow and redeem a girl and he can redeem halfway. Oh, so from here we could learn that also. Hi, when you sell a house in an ancestral field, the same rationale of Rabbi Shimon you could apply over here too. And you could say, since he has a weaker disposition, because if 1 year goes by and it wasn't redeemed, it's confirmed and it does not go out by Yovel. Also, you could say the same svara of Reb Shimon Darshan's time of the Krah, that we gave him the strength, shalav of a goyel, that he could borrow and he could redeem halfway. So from Reb Shimon's rationale of the halach of makdish te'achuzah, you could see that you would say the same thing by Batei Rechema, that yes, he'd be able to redeem it halfway. But however, Esvei, the Gemara asked on Rav Sheshes from the following brisa, because the sefer of that brisa says later on, it says when a guy sells a house in the Batei Rechema, one of the elements it says will prove a certain point that you cannot borrow and redeem, and you cannot redeem halfway, because the brisa says like this. It says in the pasuk in Yikra, as we mentioned before, it says Im gol yigol. If a man will redeem his field that he sanctified, so he'll add on a fifth of the money, and then he's going to get his field back. So, as we mentioned before, the Brisa says, this teaches us when the guy was makdish te'achuzah, he could borrow and redeem, and he could redeem halfway. That we said already. But the Brisa continues, says like this. Could you would think about like dinner that Kabul Chaim would say that it's not the way. Why would I think that it's not, that I need the pasuk to say it is? Because I could tell you the following logic. If someone sells his ancestral field to another guy, where we know he has a greater might, because if Yevel comes around, he didn't redeem it, Yevel goes back to the owner in the Yevel year, and still we give him the weaker position, that he cannot borrow and redeem, and he cannot redeem halfway. Oh, if that's the case, in Makdish, so when someone sanctifies his ancestral field, which has a weaker position, because if Yevel comes and is not redeemed, Yevel goes to come in the Yevel year. The Gemara understands it. The Brisa understands like so. Therefore, I see he has a weaker positioning. So for sure, it should be weaker. That he's not be able to borrow and redeem halfway. So therefore, it says the Brisa. Therefore, I need to have a pasuk to tell you the next word you call that no. By the makdish te'achuzah that you could borrow and redeem, you could redeem halfway. But the Brisa says back, says, wait a second, what are you bringing mala meiches te'achuzah? What are you comparing from someone who sells an ancestral field? Because shekin hoira koichai, when you sell an ancestral field, you're trying to tell me yupa koichai. You're saying, even over there yupa koichai that it goes back away yevel, so and still hoira koichai that he cannot borrow for sure by makdish. It's not true. Because it's not only better, Yosef Shekin Hayre Kaichai. What's worse when you sell this Te'achuzah, what's weaker there, which therefore wouldn't be a right to Makdish, is because Ligoil Miyad. If you want to redeem right away, you cannot when you sell an ancestral field. You have to wait 2 years that the buyer has to hold on to it. Like it says in the Pasuk in Yikra, the Mechir cannot be less than 2 years from moment to moment. And only then could you redeem it by diminishing the amount of the purchase price. Like it says, and how many years that he bought until Yevel that's going to end up going back, let's say 20 years, so the value is 20 mana, so you'll qualify that the purchase of the produce of every year is a month is worth, and that's how much you'll diminish according to how much is left. But you cannot redeem it right away. So why are you saying that it's a Kabul Chaimer that I need a pasuk? What do you say with Timber B'Makdish? He has a stronger hand. He can redeem it right away. So why do I need a pasuk to tell you? Why do you tell me? Because I would have said a Kabul Chaimer from Moichers to Makdish. That was not true. Moicher is also worse than Makdish. But says the Brisa, but Moicher Bais B'Bata or the Chaimer Yechiach. It's not true. And this is all the Brisa, and this is what we're going to prove. We're asking Rav Shesha from this. The Brisa says no, it's not true. When you sell a house in a walled city, Yechiach will disprove what you're trying to say. Because we find over there that there he does have the upper hand that he can redeem it right away. He doesn't have to wait 2 years. And even so, the ein loiv of a goyel he cannot borrow and redeem, and vegoyel lechatzoyin, and he cannot go ahead. The ein is going on both, and he cannot redeem it halfway. So you would have thought to say, hey, that then I'm back to the Kabul Chaimer from Moiches Te'achuzah. I thought I'm going to reject the Kabul Chaimer by saying it's not true because Moicher has the lower hand by the fact of that he can't redeem it right away, but Makdish could. So then Makdish should be able to have the halacha of Gula Chatzayin. So what do we need a pasuk for? It's not true. You wouldn't, because you see by Moicher Bate Arichaima that he also can be redeemed right away, and still he can't redeem it halfway. Okay, so that's why I need to have the pasuk. That's the brisa. But what's the question on Rav Shesha is, wait a second. Rav Shesha just told me whole shtickle Torah gebait on Reb Shimon. That time of the Kra, why do you say that you could go ahead and borrow and redeem? Because you're going to be a loss once time reaches, let's say by Yovel, when you're makdish te'achuzah, therefore you could be going lechatzayin. So he comes up with Batei Lechem that you could. The price says clearly that Meicha Bais Batei Lechem cannot be going lechatzayin. Says the Gemara like Kash, not difficult. Why is it in top of Chaval from an Aleph? This second teaching we just quoted right now were the Rabbanan. They don't give time of the Kra. And they say that where he has a weaker positioning in one element, then he has a weaker positioning in something else. Except where the Pasuk explicitly reveals, like by when you're having the halacha of when you're makdish te'achuzah. But by Batei Arechayma, we learn out of Gzeira Shava, Geula Gula from Mistei Achuza, that it cannot be redeemed halfway. The first teaching that I said, says Rav Sheshes, that a house in the walled city you could borrow and redeem, you could redeem halfway, was Reb Shimon, who explains time of the Kra. And therefore, yes, since you have the weaker hand by the Achuza, that's why we said you have the upper hand in redeeming it. So the same thing would be that since you have the weaker hand when it's going to be, the year is going to be up, so then you have the stronger hand that you could borrow and redeem, and you could redeem halfway. So you're right, it's machlokes tanaim. Now the Gemara just finishes up by saying Tana Chad, we learned in one brisa that if someone sells a house in the walled city, that he could borrow and redeem, and he could redeem halfway. In another brisa, no, you cannot borrow and redeem halfway. So the Gemara said, like Kasha, that's exactly what we just said. Rabban, this is exactly how Rav Shesher answered. The second teaching, the second brisa is the Rabbanan that hold that no, you cannot do because you have a weaker position, then you lose it all the way. Reb Shimon, the first one is Reb Shimon that says time of the Kra, why we're being lenient, and therefore we're going to be lenient also by both the Erechaim that he could borrow and redeem, he could redeem halfway. Thank you to any time.